Hey, it's Chris. You know it's going to be a spicy one when I've got a drink on the table, right? You know what? We're going to go with a slightly not at all controversial topic here. Not at all whatsoever. Prevew versus review. What's the difference? What's the definition? Does it really even freaking matter? You know what? Internal debate said yes and no on the media side of things. And let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Now, the weird thing was, right, you would think nowadays, especially with the rise of crowdfunding, that there would be a universal definition, right? An accepted definition of what is a preview versus what is a review. And you'd think on the surface that everyone could agree on what the difference is, right? Well, maybe as a consumer, you have an opinion. Maybe as a consumer, you have your definition of what that is, right? We're all shills. That's not where we're going with this quite yet. But there was a discussion that I saw that was going back and forth about previews and reviews on the media side of things. On the internal, what do you call your content when it is this? What label do you give it? Do you give it the P? Do you give it the minus P, if you will? That sounded weird. It sounded better in my head. But there was a really interesting dichotomous split between what is this and what isn't this, right? And let's start just with the basics, right? When you think of preview nowadays, you think of crowdfunding, I'm sure. You think of preview, you think of this, I'm sure. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. Some people, again, how do you feel about this? Anything that is not final is considered a preview. Anything that falls under the this is some way, shape, or form a prototype, so we can't call it an actual review. And we're going to call it a preview. Okay. What do you call a review then? Has to be a final product? You can't have, a complete gameplay minus the artistic aspect of things. You can't call that a review if it's not considered a final product from a prototype side of things. Does art really change dramatically your feelings on the game in the first place? Here's the other split to go along with it. Because again, as in my head, as clear as this is, right? And you can tell me in the comment section how wrong or right I am. Usually it's the wrong, but we'll go with it either way. A preview doesn't have opinions. I personally look at a preview as this is an explanation of the game. This is an overview of the game. This is a description, components, explanation of how to play. It is no longer subjective. You are trying to be as objective as possible. But if you start saying that a preview is anything before the final copy, well, now you have people saying, well, I don't feel so bad about, it's just a preview. I'm going to give an opinion on a preview, right? And therein lies the split again further. Preview, review. Unpaid preview, paid preview, unpaid review, paid review? Which, let's stick with that last one here for a second before I get off track too far. There is this ubiquitous, always commentary that so-and-so, somebody, the nefarious people, somewhere, some way, some shape, some form are getting paid for reviews. And not just like previews, right? Like actual freaking reviews. What the interesting part of this is, right? I'd love to know who these people are. Again, just because I want to know. I'm curious, right? It's the boogeyman. It is the freaking almost embodiment of the boogeyman in the board game world. There's always this veiled reference of the paid reviewers, right? Who? I never see any names mentioned. None. Paid previews? Sure. Again, no judgment on the paid previews, right? However, my problem is that it's starting to get, well, it's not even blurring the lines anymore. You know, previews, again, like I said, like I thought the universal definition was, you know, up until rather recently, right? That people doing previews were objective. Trying to stay, here's the key point, trying to stay as objective as possible, with as little bias as possible. But seeing some of the commentary, I don't even know if I'm in the majority anymore, right? And we've seen, you know, check out this past week's roundup, the rise, the freaking mother rise of previews across the board, right? Which is why, you know, it's a little divisive, because the marketing hammer, the marketing tsunami, if you will, the hand at play, controlling the strings, right, is definitely at work. Because this is the other thing that people don't realize, or maybe people do but don't really always pay attention to, right? Like, one interesting thing that I tend to do now on crowdfunding, right, is you see a crowdfunding page on Kickstarter, and you scroll down, and you scroll down, and you scroll down, and you scroll down, and you finally hit the video section, right? And you see what videos are there and how they label them. But what's more telling sometimes is you go over to the Board Game Geek, and you see what videos are there, and then you do a head-to-head comparison, right? I mean, spend plenty of my videos that don't make pages, you know? Because I am giving an opinion, you know? And I've talked to one or two other people about this in the past too, right? Like, with them saying the same thing, that, you know what? My videos don't always make the page either. It doesn't matter how big or small you are, if the message isn't what they want endorsed on the page, right? It's happened to people much bigger than me, much more notoriety than me. And, you know, again, strings being pulled, right? That goes back to being informed consumer, which is why I talk about who the freaking heck is this game right for? Which some people, you know, as a designer, as a company, some people are like, yeah, I want people who are going to like my game to buy it in the first place. I don't just want to mass market sell it. And others are like, nope, I just need to get it in as many hands as possible. So there you go. There's a line. Where that line is, though, even from my side of things, doing these videos, talking to these companies, sending my links to my videos, you know, I get trepidatious. Even on my review videos, like when I say, I didn't really like this component, I didn't really like this part, or I had some concerns about this, you know, am I going to get an email back ever in the future? Don't know. No idea. Again, does something have to be completely finished? That was a very divisive point in this discussion. A lot of people saying if it's in any way, shape, or form a prototype, that you can't call it a review. Like, you know, I have a game right here. This is a prototype-ish. It's one of the nicest prototypes you'll ever see. But I guarantee the game mechanics aren't changing one bit whatsoever between the crowdfunding campaign and the delivery, right? No, that gameplay is squared away. So did I do a preview on it? Because it's not technically post-campaign, right? Because, I mean, that's the other line of people. It's either during, beginning, or just, you know, after the campaign where you don't have a... Like, does that really matter? Does it? I don't think so. You know? I'll be frank with you. I could care less what the aesthetic looked like on this game. You're going to like it or not based on the mechanics. If you don't like the mechanics of it, guess what? A different shade of coloring on it is not going to change your opinion. And if it does, well, you're judging books by covers, and that's a whole nother issue, right? So where does that actually need to be drawn then? If that's, oh, that's an exception, Chris. Well, you know what? You know, I've had more of those than I have of the others. So lots of exceptions then to your rule? Well, then is it really a rule of dividing the previews and the reviews? And you know what? Let's talk about the money for a second here. Let's talk about the freaking pink elephant in the room. Do you care if somebody gets paid? Do you care? Do you care? Do you look at the videos anymore and say, I know that this is a paid video. I'm not going to watch it, or I don't think as much of their opinion. I have no idea. I have no idea, right? From a business side of things, let's take it from there first. I know why companies do it. Like I said, shadowy market it. You know what? You can get people to endorse your product with a bigger reach. Absolutely understandable. Makes a lot of sense. From a, professional side, behind the camera on this side of things, I can get paid to talk about board games. What? Absolutely. So I understand it. Makes sense, right? At the same time, does it really truly affect people's opinion? Because the honest answer I lean towards is no. I don't know. I don't know, though. That's just an anecdotal guess at this point. Because if people truly felt that way, right? And I'm going off of evidence, trying to, maybe-ish. Then if that was the case, you would expect these videos to not get traction, right? You would expect videos in the form of Board Game Geek descriptions, only with pictures, to not be viewed hardly at all, right? But here we are, right? They are. And guess what? Because they are, the amount of them has just done this over the past couple years. And guess what? It's just going to be more and more and more. I joked on the roundup the other day that I wouldn't be surprised in the near future if you saw next to none that weren't previews a couple years from now. Why risk it, right? Unless you're a small indie looking for some big pub, taking a risk with people that are maybe gonna, have broad reach and mass market marketing, right? Because let's also be frank about this. There are a lot of people out there that base what game they should get off of other people's feelings and opinions on the game in the first place. Now, I'm targeting that for a second, and I'm going to narrow it down with a scalpel here, because what I'm saying and what I'm not saying there. What I am saying is you should never base your opinion on a game solely on one other person's channel's feelings on it, right? Anyone going to disagree with me on that one? Is anyone going to look me in the eye and say, Chris, you're wrong on that point. I am going to take so-and-so's view of this game and take it as the freaking gospel truth. And there can be no other truth. No. If you're halfway reasonable, you know that that's an insane take. But yet, here we are, right? Might equals right. Don't tell me you don't see it. Sinister Fish Games, recent Moon, they sent out an email saying, hey guys, Shut Up and Sit Down's review of Moon basically put it out of stock everywhere. So if you don't think that happens, it does. Does that make it right though? And that's the issue here. Because where I'm going with this is taking it back to the preview side of things. Is if the previews start being utilized for quotes, because that's what's happening more too, if you haven't noticed, which is freaking scary and weird. Because these are supposed to be objective previews that are, again, the vast majority being paid. And those are the quotes that are being used on the crowdfunding page. Which, again, is a very deceptive marketing tool in general. Because you're trying to take something, even if the video is done all in the proper way, it's being manipulated. Or, here's the other side of things, right? A lot of times we're asked for a separate quote. How would you feel if someone's paid preview was completely objective, but then they also had a separate quote that wasn't in the video in the first place, that said something purely subjective. Would you feel comfortable with that? Would you? I don't know. I'm putting that question out there because, again, if these weren't getting traction, folks, businesses don't spend money on stuff that doesn't work. If you do, not in business very long, right? Going back a tad, combining things a little bit in a different way as well, does one form of bias mean more to you than another, right? Because this is the other thing, right? Well, you got a free copy of the game, you can't be unbiased. You're right, you can't be unbiased in general. That's a whole separate straw man argument separately. We can talk about that later, right? Everybody has bias. Everybody is biased. I'm biased. I'm biased in making this video. My bias is my personal views and opinions on this. But is my personal bias, if I get a free copy of the game, is that better or worse? Because this is another argument than, say, getting paid. Is money actually more of a bias? Is it? Is it? Is it a certain amount of money? $10? $10, here you go with the game. That won't bias me. That won't bias me whatsoever. Well, Chris, you're a bigger channel now. We pay the small channels $10. Here, we're going to give you $50 to go with it. Okay. Chris, you just broke 10K. We're going to give you $100 for those reviews now. Does that change your thought at all? 10? 100? I've never gotten that, by the way. That would be, talk about ideal, right? $100 per game review. Sign me up. I'm for sale. Anyway. But just another thought that some people were proposing out there, and just an interesting mental exercise to say, okay, do I think that way? What do I believe on that side of things? Yeah. It's tricky. I'm not going to say slippery slope, because slippery slope is a fallacy. Go look it up. But it's tricky, and it's being more and more muddled on a daily basis. It is. And who you talk to in what section or what echo chamber is going to reinforce your views. So if nothing else, go see what the other side says and see if you agree with it. If you only listen to one side, you're never going to get the full conversation. And sometimes the other side will change your thoughts and opinions on things. And you know what? That's okay. That's called the scientific process in general. Get the evidence, evaluate the evidence, and then make your assumptions based on it. There you go. Too much time, too much effort, too much money. Not enough money, right? Anyway, that's all I got. Enough on this controversial, fun topic to talk about. I'm sure I guarantee it won't be the last time I talk about it on this channel. Gosh, I love social commentary videos. Rant over! Didn't even get through much of my drink either. Peace out. Stay classy. See you around.